My name is Lucio Vasquez. I'm going to be your instructor. I'm a certified flight instructor. Now, my background to teach aeronautics, I have a bachelor's of science in professional aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It was actually the Houston campus, so I didn't go to the Florida campus. I didn't go to the Prescott, Arizona campus. I went to, they had the worldwide curriculum, so I was able to stay in Houston and get my training with them. Now, my background is I'm dual service. I have a honorable discharge paperwork from both the U.S. Army and the United States Air Force. My background in the Air Force was I was an officer candidate with the Reserve Officer Training Corps between 2008 and 2011. And I actually went in to fly. That was my primary goal for that I went in, and they told me I was too old, which I don't know if you guys can guess how old I am, but you know, I'm a little bit older than I look, so I'm not that old.
35?
Huh?
35?
Wow, no, I'm not 35. I'm a little bit younger than that, but
29.
I'm 29. Yeah, I'm 29, about to turn 30. And
29.
hmm?
That's just,
Yeah, I know. Well, apparently they like them young, but no, they told me that I had to be in flight school by my 29th birthday, and and I think it kind of worked out for the best because going through military training, one of the things I really didn't want to go through was SEER school, which was a survival, escape, resistance and evasion, and I don't feel like spending 10 days up in a tree starving, so I don't get captured and beat up. So I'm a little too old for all that action. So. Okay, so the officer candidate route didn't work out, but it really helped me out. It really got me back into shape, and I think just basically it's been a plus all around. So that was my history with the U.S. Air Force. Now, I was a U.S. Army reservist. That's actually how I started out between 2000 and 2005. So I signed up for the Army when I was 18 as a reservist, and then I wound up getting deployed in 2003 for Operation Enduring Freedom. That was when the whole Afghanistan thing was going down. So I was a cargo specialist, so completely different MOS than what I'm doing now as a career. I operated forklifts, heavy machinery, basically ran a third world truck stop. That's the best way to explain it. So
so you didn't fly planes?
no, not in the Army. Not in the Army. I did something completely different. I was a heavy equipment operator, so we were logistics. So we were concerned with bringing beans and bullets into the battlefield. Primarily, I was stationed at Bagram Air Base. And I'll bring pictures of this. We operated a big piece of equipment called a Kalmar. It was known as a rough terrain cargo handler. So it was just basically a big old arm, a big crane with a hand on it that you could use to pick up those Connexes, which was those 20-foot and 40-foot mill van containers. So you could pick them up, rotate them, stack them, do whatever you had to do with it, and they just loaded everything. So it had whatever.
Is it kind of like a Moffett?
Hmm?
You know what a Moffett is?
What's a, go ahead and describe it. I might know what it
It's
is.
like usually they're on the back of, trying to think like Unimogs and stuff. They're usually like six-wheel drive vehicles.
Now, you said a Unimog.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
I know what
Moffett-
it.
A Moffett's the crane arm that's usually on the back of like a truck when they're say like the truck will, like pull up to whatever they can lift it up. It's just more like a mobile like.
Oh, like a backhoe or something that they would put on the back of a Unimog. That
Yeah.
you said. Okay. I don't think we use Unimogs out there. Unimogs, isn't that more like a European piece of equipment, or is it? Well, I'm not too sure. I didn't see a Unimog out there, but we did have Humvees. We did have a bunch of
It's like an 18-wheeler more. than
Okay.
Anything else with a huge crane arm on the back.
Okay, well, we dealt with we dealt mostly with the rough terrain cargo handlers, which is a wretch, and they make them by the Kalmar Company in San Antonio, Texas, and that was primarily the vehicle that we operated. Now, what they would put in those Connex is they'd put anything in there from vehicles to food to clothing to weapons to you name it. I mean, some of them they even retrofit into little offices, and then all you'd have to do is hook power up to them, or hook the AC up to them, and then you could do it. So, so it was pretty interesting. But anyway, enough about that. That's in the past now, and I'm teaching as a flight instructor now. So, anyway, so that being said, the FAA ratings, I've got them over at Delta Connection Academy. and during 2005, 2008, and that was a DCA campus in Houston again. I didn't go to the Florida campus. I didn't go to any other campuses. They had a short stint there where they opened up a base in Houston, and I was able to jump in and get my training through them. So, needless to say, Houston's been a very good city to me. I've been able to get my education in Houston, and a lot of my, a lot of the stuff a lot of my skill training and life training came from that city. So, anyway, so needless to say, I think I'm a little qualified to teach this class. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about this right here? This in general? Nothing at all? Okay, all right, well, let me tell you a little bit of history.
Why didn't you go to the one at Embry in Florida?
Huh?
Why didn't you go to Embry-Riddle in Florida?
Oh, because the Worldwide campus was a whole lot cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a whole lot cheaper, and
I'm kind of looking at going there right now.
well, one thing you can do, and I'm currently doing my master's curriculum through the Worldwide campus, and it's a lot cheaper, and it makes living just so much easier because when you take out student loans, you can take out the loans based off of if you were going to the actual campus, like the Florida campus or the Stanford campus, but you're doing the online curriculum. So it's a lot cheaper, and then you can use that money that you borrow to help you live and do stuff like that. So you're not in this typical college student situation to where you're borrowing the max and you're still, not meeting your costs. So it just makes living a whole lot easier, and the quality of education is good. And, and I talked to a lot of the Embry-Riddle alumni, and a lot of the Embry-Riddle alumni just recognize a worldwide degree also. They just don't seem to, there doesn't seem to be like a division like, oh, okay, well, he went to the Florida campus, and, oh, he had the worldwide curriculum, and, and, well, and the thing is that, and people will ask me, well, is it a real degree? Because, you kind of run into those situations where you start going to, like, let's say some schools like the University of Phoenix Online, or you start, or, like some of these, like, for-profit universities or whatnot, and people ask me, well, is it a real degree? And as far as I'm concerned, the U.S., it was good enough for the U.S. Air Force, because U.S. Air Force recognized the degree as good enough for getting into a candidacy. So if it's good enough for the U.S. Air Force, then it's good enough for anybody in the civilian world who's doing hiring. The lieutenant colonel, the retired one who taught the Corps at the University of Houston, he had a master's in aeronautical science from the worldwide curriculum. So needless to say, it's a recognized degree, so I don't have any problems with that. Okay, well, let me see. Another thing I wanted to add on to here was a good thing about the Embry-Riddle Houston campus was Houston is a major home of NASA. Everybody knows that, right? I mean, you see the movies in Houston, we have a problem, that type of deal. And, who's actually seen this Clear Lake or the NASA in Houston?
Johnson Space Center?
Johnson Space Center, there you go. Who's actually been? Okay, well, that's good. So there's a little bit of, so you guys have seen a little bit about it. One of the benefits I had with going to Embry-Riddle in the Houston campus was that there's a lot of the space industry there. There was a lot of influence from the space industry. So a lot of the professors that I had, they were in some way, shape, or form affiliated with NASA. My last instructor that I had, who taught me, I still keep in contact, he works for a company called Wiley that contracts out to NASA, and they build like a lot of the equipment that goes on the space station. So he built like the treadmills and the exercise bikes and stuff like that. So and he always talks about it. So whenever these instructors would teach like a typical like aviation class or whatever, they'd always start bringing the space program into it. And they always start bringing some of their projects that they were doing in space into the program. And it was just, it was just very interesting. It kind of go off on a tangent a little bit, but it was just I felt like I got a whole lot more out of that class, talking to these guys and some of the issues that they would have, trying to deal with stuff on the space station. And I felt like it was just a whole lot better than, some like old guy talking about some like World War II airplane that you might have seen at the show that, everybody knows about the old stuff. So, I just felt like it just put me closer on the cutting edge of technology. So, okay, anyway, so enough about that. I guess I'll go ahead and clean this off real quick. Okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about some of my flying jobs that I've had. Okay, because now we all go into flying. We all start learning about flying, and we all want to be pilots. And nobody, and maybe to a certain degree, we all have an idea what environments we'll be working with, especially when we go out here and we fly. And we're gonna have, the you're always dealing with the control tower. You're always dealing with the runway. You're always dealing a nice big runway. You're always dealing with controlled airspace when you're operating out here at this school. So during training, you can kind of get used to the idea that, oh, well, I'm always going to be under the safety net of being in controlled airspace, or I'm always going to be under the safety net of the controller, the tower, or controlled airspace, or something. And when I was training at Delta, that's kind of how we operated, because when I was at Delta, we worked at Ellington Field, which was a civil military airfield. And it was busy. It was Class D. We had a control tower, and we had a lot of military traffic coming in and out. So we had Apaches, we had C-130s, we had F-16s. We even had the high-altitude NASA jet. I'll bring in some pictures of it, but it was basically a plane that they sent up into the high atmosphere to, run studies and whatnot. We even had the Guppy. I don't know if y'all guys...
Guppies are badass.
Yeah, the Guppy and the Super Guppy, the big old, it looks like a flying building. I mean, it's basically, they use it to transport some of the shuttle parts. So what it was a specially designed aircraft where they could put some of the modules in there for either shuttle or rocket or whatever they had, and they would use that to transport it. Well, every once in a while they'd have to fly it, and we called it the Super Guppy. So you'd be going to class, or you'd be driving around Clear Lake just grabbing lunch or whatever, and there's this huge flying building. I mean, that's literally what it looks like. It's like if you put wings on this building and threw it into the air. Huh?
It doesn't look like it should fly.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like it should fly. It completely looks like it defies the, it looks like it completely defies all the rules of physics and aerodynamics and everything that we know. But it flew, and I guess one of my instructors taught me that one of the many things, but one of the big things that the Russians proved about aeronautics was that if you throw enough power behind anything, it'll fly. So hence you got the Guppy. But, okay, so when I got done with my CFI rating in 2008, I wanted to go get a job. And I don't know if you guys know what the economy was like back in 2008 or whatnot, but it was pretty poor for finding a CFI because the Great Recession, quote-unquote, was going on. And you guys are almost out of here in 5 minutes, but I'll just finish up. The Great Recession, quote-unquote, was going on. And, we had a lot of... So it was pretty challenging to fly. Finding a job as a CFI, especially a newly minted one, because everybody wanted the experience. So my very first job that I had was working at a skydiving zone as a student, as a pilot instructor for some of the skydivers and some of the students. And basically, the way I got the job was essentially I just showed up and didn't leave until I had the job. And you'll find that happens a lot in aviation, where persistence really pays. But so I was able to teach the owner's son his private pilot rating, and essentially the very first way it started out, and hang on, let me grab a pen or a marker or whatnot if I got it. I had them and then I lost them, so.
They're on the board. Yeah, there's one on the board.
Here, I got another one right here. So, I worked at a skydiving field, and this just goes back to the environment. And to finish up, over here, you work on wide runways, long runways, control towers, whatnot. So that was basically what was said in my mind. Okay, that's the environment I'm going to be working in. Then I get to the zone, where the drop zone, basically where all the skydivers work, and what we're working with. And it's not just a little plane; it's a big old Twin Otter that they're using to haul up all the skydivers. Quite literally, we're working with a 1,500-foot runway with power lines on both sides. Okay, so you have a power line here, and then you have a power line here, and it's not like, so you had your typical 50-foot obstacle, and that's how we were dealing with it. What we'd have to do is when we were coming back in, we'd have to practically do a short field landing, like that, hit the mark, and then brake. Hit the brakes on the plane and come to a stop before you basically hit the fence line on the other side. It was the same way going out. When you were leaving, you'd go and you take off, short field, take off right here, and then you take off. For a little Cessna, it was okay. For the big old plane that we were using, sometimes I'd see the pilot take off, and sometimes those wheels would just barely look like it just barely cleared the wires, coming in and coming out. So, I mean, so when we teach you this stuff, when we teach you the short field, when we teach you the soft field, we teach it for a reason. Because you may always think that, oh, I'll forever be flying on, nice smooth runways and everything lighted up and perfect, and yeah, we just do it for the FAA test, but we're realistically always going to have 8,000 feet. Now, we teach it for a reason, because you just never know where you're going to be flying at. Pilots are going to be in demand in the future. They're in demand now. They're going to be in demand, later on. And flying is always going to be a key essential part of business and humanitarian operations and cargo and shipping and in military operations and anything. And planes will have to go into places where they may not have time or the effort or the ability to put in your big long runway with your position lights and whatnot. So you better believe it that sometimes they'll have to put those things in and out of places where you think they won't be able to. But it's all about adaptability. You always got to be able to adapt as a pilot. The plane's always got to be able to adapt for the mission, and flexibility is always the key to air power. So just remember that. If you're able to be flexible and adapt to the situation at hand, then that will make you so much better as a pilot.